Hey everyone. Okay, welcome back to the channel. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for coming to a long form video. So you might know today's Good Friday. Whoa. Okay, this means a lot for our faith today. So today, honestly, I wanted to make a long form video talking about it because I do make a lot of shorts, but which I think most of you on here do know me because of those, but I wanted to make a long form video talking about one of the most important days in Christian history. Hello. So that's what we're gonna talk about today. Okay. Okay. So first off, what's Good Friday? Well, it's funny you ask. So basically, Good Friday, simply to put it, was the day Jesus was crucified on a cross and died. That's the basic layout of what it is. But if you really ask what Good Friday is, oh Lord have mercy, you done open a can of worms. So that's what we're gonna talk about today. So starting off, there's no better way to talk about it than to read the Bible. So get your Bibles out right here, right here. Get your physical Bibles out. And we are gonna read. But before we read it, there is a lot. So I'm going to kind of summarize what came before it, and that I'm going to ask you to pause the video and read Matthew 27, chapter 27, verses 24 through 56 on your own. But before that, we're going to summarize what has happened so far. So basically, Jesus was born. Whoa, whoa, whoa. That's kind of big. But nobody really knew he was the Messiah, right? Except him and God. So, they kind of had that thing going. So Jesus was born, and then he was raised up by his parents, Mary and Joseph, and then a little something happened when he was 30. He decided to start his ministry. He got baptized. God gave him like a holy blessing, really. He said, yup, this is the one, guys. He's my son. I love him. So listen. And then Jesus starts his ministry. He goes a lot of places where he lives, right? And he does a lot of miracle, a lot of signs. Even around the legalist, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Uh-oh. And the scribes, aka what we might like to refer to as lawyers. They knew the law very well, and the Pharisees and Sadducees, they knew they had like a lot of book knowledge. They knew scripture, and it's kind of sad because since they knew scripture, they should have known Jesus was the Messiah, but they were blind because of their pride. And Jesus wasn't too fond of them. They were not fond of Jesus by no means. No means. And it got really bad to the point where they were like, we're gonna kill Jesus. We're over with this. We don't want him living anymore. We gotta get rid of him somehow. He's getting to be too much. Because he was taking the attention away from them, so they're like, oh my gosh. No, it's about me. And Jesus was like, bro, it's about me. So then, Jesus had 12 disciples, by the way, and the Pharisees and one of the disciples named Judas Iscariot, they kind of teamed up because Judas was he was very I like money. Money's well, I kind of like money. So Judas got to the point where he was like, okay, Jesus, I'm kind of over with you. So, Judas and the Pharisees and the Sadducees and all those people, they teamed up with Judas, and they were like, okay, so we're gonna devise this plan. We're gonna go to where Jesus is. Judas, as a sign to show who's Jesus, you're gonna kiss him on the cheek. That was just a thing for the time, by the way. That was like a normal greeting type thing. And then we're gonna arrest Jesus. And they brought Roman officers with them to arrest Jesus. And they brought like clubs with them. They brought a lot of like fighting stuff. So then it was a night. And Judas and all those people went to Jesus. And well, long story short, there was a little fiasco. Somebody's ear got cut off. Jesus healed that person's ear. And then Jesus was arrested after Judas gave the sign. So yeah, one of Jesus's disciples betrayed Jesus. Keep in mind that person walked with Jesus personally for 3 long years, watching him do a lot of signs and wonders, proving that bro was literally the anointed one of God. But Judas kind of let Satan enter him and betray Jesus. So basically, the Pharisees and Sadducees couldn't legally do anything to Jesus because at the time Israel was occupied by Rome, so they didn't have any legal power to do anything. So what they did is they handed Jesus over to Pilate, because Pilate was a person who had legal power in Rome and held a seat of authority. So the first few verses in Matthew 27 say, "When morning came, all the chief priests and the elders of the people took counsel against Jesus to put him to death, and they bound him and led him away and delivered him over to Pilate the governor." And then the next passage, Judas, he hangs himself. He had a lot of guilt because he realized, oh shoot, yeah, so bro hanged himself. His guts literally spilled out. Sorry if that like made you puke. And then the next passage, verse 11. "Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, 'Are you the king of the Jews?' Jesus said, 'You have said so,'" banger. Verse 12. But when he was accused by the chief priests and elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate said to him, "Do you not hear how many things they testify against you?" But he gave him no answer, not even to a single charge, so that the governor was greatly amazed. And then the next passage, there was this whole conundrum. Oh, and keep in mind this all takes place during the festival of unleavened bread, which goes hand in hand with the Passover, which we will talk about later, but not right now, so stay here to hear about that. And custom to do during this festival was release one prisoner, and that was that. So there's this prisoner named Barabbas. Barabbas was he was a messy guy. He did some illegal things. And he was literally a notorious prisoner. That's what the word says. And Pilate basically said, "Okay, so we have 2 options. Do you want me to release Jesus or Barabbas?" And the crowd that previously loved Jesus just a few days ago, they're saying, "Hosanna," which means save now. They were like, "Hosanna, we love you, we love you, come on. And now they're saying, "Crucify him." Bro, what? So they said, "Okay, we want Barabbas to be released, and Jesus, meh." And Pilate was just like, "Okay, I'll punish him," but the crowd said, "No, we want you to crucify him." Honey, what? So the crowd saying, "Crucify him, release Barabbas, and crucify Jesus." And Pilate said, "Hold up, this man done do nothing wrong. He done do nothing wrong. What do you mean?" But now on, I'm just going to have you read Matthew 27, verses 24 through 46. So please pause the video, go read that, and then unpause the video, and we'll talk about it. You're back? Okay, good. That was a lot, was it not? Was it not? That was a lot. So now I kind of want to break it down a little bit, because there's a lot there, like, obviously. Like, the death of literally the Son of God was in there? Hold up. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to read a few notes from a commentary. And I use the John MacArthur commentary, honestly, because that's just what I have. So I'm going to read a few notes from there right now. So first, the first note I'm going to read is for verse 25. They said, "His blood be on us." So the note that's written, it says, The Jews accept the blame for the execution of Jesus and do not hold the Romans responsible. Cross-reference chapter 21, verses 38 and 39, and then the next, verse 26. The word scourged or scourged, I don't know. Guys, personally, I can't talk. So, like, I'm not sure what, like, you read it as. Anyways, that word, this is one of the very gruesome details, but it just shows how gruesome the crucifixion was. Not just the crucifixion, what happened before the crucifixion. So, the whip used for scourging consisted of several strands of leather attached to a wooden handle. Each strand had a bit of metal or bone attached to the end. The victim was bound to a post by the wrist, high over his head, so that the flesh of the back would be taut. An expert of wielding the scourge could literally tear the flesh from the back, lacerating muscles, and sometimes even exposing the kidneys or other internal organs. Scourging was fatal in some cases. What? Keep in mind, the perfect Son of God never did anything wrong. He never did anything wrong. Did this for you. He did this for you. He had you on your mind when he was doing this. Keep that in mind. Next note for verse 29, a reed in his right hand. And before that, a scarlet robe. So the other Gospels, Mark and John, they have not the same account, but they have an account of these same events, and they say that this was a purple robe, and purple represented majesty and like a king. So that was part of them mocking him, putting a scarlet/purple robe on him. And then again, verse 29, a reed in his right hand. To imitate a scepter in a mocking way, the soldiers purposely chose something like a stick to put in Jesus' hand. They went to town when they were mocking him. They said, "Okay, we finna do like, bro." It's so sad too. Like, what you mean? Anyways, verse 30, they spat on him, and then see Isaiah chapter 50, verse 6, if you want to like get a little like, ooh, that's cool. And then for verse 31, to be crucified, that part. Okay. Oh, there's a lot here. So, crucifixion was a form of punishment that had been passed down to the Romans from the Persians, Phoenicians, and Carthaginians. Roman crucifixion was a lingering doom by design. Roman executioners had perfected the art of slow torture while keeping the victim alive. Some victims even lingered until they were eaten alive by birds or prey or wild beast. Most hung on the cross for days before dying of exhaustion, dehydration, traumatic fever, or most likely suffocation. When the legs would no longer support the weight of the body, the diaphragm was constricted in a way that made breathing impossible. That is why breaking the legs would hasten death. And then in parentheses it says, John chapter 19 verses 31 through 33. But this was necessary in Jesus' case. The hands were unusually nailed. The hands were usually nailed through the wrist, and the feet through the instep or the Achilles tendon, sometimes using one nail for both feet. None of these wounds would be fatal, but their pain would become unbearable as the hours dragged on. The most notable features of crucifixion was the stigma of disgrace that was attached to it, and then in parentheses Galatians 3:13, 5:11, and then Hebrew 12:2. One indignity was the humiliation of carrying one's cross, which might weigh as much as 200 pounds. Normally, a quaternion, 4 soldiers would escort the prisoner through the crowd to the place of crucifixion. A placard bearing the indictment would be hung around the person's neck. That is so brutal. And then we're gonna, that's a lot to take in. You finna pause this video and process that, because that's a lot. And then going to verse 45 from the 6th hour until the 9th hour. So, That's from noon until 3 p.m. The crucifixion began at 9 a.m. And then in parentheses, oh, never mind, at 9 a.m. For verse 36, Jesus says something very like interesting, and hopefully I don't butcher it, but it's like Eli, I guys, I'm so bad at this, but it's like Eli Eli lama sabachthani. It's something along that lines, and what that means is so Eli is the Hebrew, the rest Aramaic, and this cry fulfills Psalm 22:1, which we will read later, one of many striking parallels between that psalm and the specific events of the crucifixion. Christ at the moment was experiencing the abandonment and despair that resulted from the outpouring of divine wrath on him as sin bearer. And what that means is, my God, why have you forsaken me? That is so heavy. And then when we read Psalm 22 later, keep my God, why have you forsaken me in your brain? Because just trust. Okay, and then I think our last note is for verse 51. The veil of the temple was torn. This is one of my favorite parts in the Bible. Oh my gosh. Okay, so the note says, in other words, the curtain that blocked the entrance to the most holy place, and then in parentheses Exodus 26:33 and Hebrews 9:3. The tearing of the veil signifies that the way into God's presence is now open to all through a new and living way. And then in parentheses Hebrews 10:19-22. And then it says, the fact it tears from top to bottom shows that no person split the veil. God did it. Okay, so now that we've broken that down a little bit, we are going to move on and read a somewhat famous Bible verse. If you're a Christian, then you're like, okay, I know this passage. But if you're not a Christian, first off, welcome. Hi. And then second, so Isaiah 52. The book of Isaiah, chapter 52, and then verses 13 to the end of that chapter, and then we're going to read chapter 53, verse 1 to 12. So flip there right now. And when you read this, keep in mind what you just read about the crucifixion. Okay, it says, behold, my servant shall act wisely. He shall be high and lifted up, and shall be exalted. As many were astonished at you, his appearance was so marred beyond human semblance, and his form beyond that of a children of mankind. So shall he sprinkle many nations. Kings shall shut their mouths because of him. For that which has not been told them they see. That which they have not heard they understand. Who has believed what he has heard from us? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he grew up before them like a young plant, and like a root out of dry ground. He had no form or majesty that we should look at him, and no beauty that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. As one from whom men hide their faces, he was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds oh my gosh, I'm gonna kill myself. And with his wounds we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that before its shears is silent, so he opened not his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away. And as for his generation, who considered that he was cut off out of the land of the living, stricken for the transgression of my people. And they made his grave with the wicked, and with a rich man in his death, although he had done no violence, and there is no deceit in his mouth. Yet it was the will of the Lord to crush him. He has put him to grief. When his soul makes an offering for guilt, he shall see his offspring, he shall prolong his days. The will of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. Out of the anguish of his soul he shall see and be satisfied. By his knowledge shall the righteous one, my servant, make many to be accounted righteous, and he shall bear their iniquities. Therefore I will divide him a portion with the many, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his soul to death and was numbered with the transgressors. Yet he bore the sin of many and makes intercession for the transgressors. Okay, we're done reading that, guys. We are the transgressors. We are the ones he intercedes for. Why? I don't know. Because he loves us. That's like literally the only reason. It doesn't make sense. It's not gonna make sense. And that's what beautiful things that don't make sense are beautiful things. Let that be known. And the part where it says like he was silent, go back to the part where Pilate was questioning him and all he said was, "Your words, not mine." He said, "You said so." Whoa. And then it says like his appearance was so marred, like he did not look like a human. That goes back to the bro was like he was scourged. That does not, when a person leaves that, they don't look human anymore. So yeah. And then one of the like biggest parts that are like the most well known is he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed. That's literally so powerful. And just look at the word pierced. Pierced in the wrist. So that's like a little thing where like, okay, that makes sense. Like, I'm starting to connect the dots. Like, yep, the crucifixion, like, yeah. And then keep in mind, this wasn't written after Jesus' death. This was written, like, this is like a rough estimate, I really don't know, like 700 years before Jesus' death. This was a prophecy. Okay, next I want you to flip to Psalm chapter 22, and we're going to read verses 1 through 18. Okay, Psalm 22. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me from the words of my groaning? Oh my God, I cry by day, but you do not answer, and by night, but I find no rest. Yet you are holy, enthroned on the praises of Israel. In you our fathers trusted. They trusted, and you delivered them. To you they cried and were rescued. In you they trusted and were not put to shame. But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by mankind and despised by the people. All who see me mock me. They make mouths at me, they wag their heads. He trusts in the Lord, let him deliver him. Let him rescue him, for he delights in him. And then I'm going to have you read verses 9 through 13 by yourself. Okay, verse 14. I am poured out like water. Remember what happened when they poked the side of Jesus? What came out? Keep that in mind. My strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue sticks to my jaws. You lay me in the dust of death. For dogs encompass me. A company of evildoers encircle me. They have pierced my hands and my feet. Oh my gosh. Verse 17. I can count all my bones. They stare and gloat over me. They divide my garments among me, and for my clothing they cast lots. What did those soldiers just do? In what you just read not that long ago? They divided his thoughts. And then for the final passage, we're going to go all the way back to Exodus. Exodus chapter 12, verses 3 through 14. And then we're going to read a little something after that in the same verse. Okay, Exodus 12, verses 3 through 14. So for a little context, back then, there's a lot that goes into this, but long story short, the Israelites were enslaved to the Egyptians, and God rose somebody up named Moses, and he said, Moses, I want you to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. I want you to take them from slavery to freedom in my name. And Moses was like, but then God was like, yeah, and Moses was like, yeah. So that's a little context. And the way God did this was by sending 10 plagues. And the last plague was the death of the firstborn. So God was like, okay, Pharaoh's heart is like extremely hardened. So the last plague is that the firstborn sons are going to die. And when this happens, Moses, I need you to do this. And this is what he tells them to do. Verse 3. Tell all the congregation of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, every man shall take a lamb according to their father's house, a lamb for a household. And if the household is too small for a lamb, then he and his nearest neighbor shall take according to the number of persons, according to what each can eat. You shall make your count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male a year old. You may take it from the sheep or from the goats, and you shall keep it until the 14th day of this month, when the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill their lamb at twilight. Then they shall take some of the blood and put it on two. Then they shall take some of the blood and put it. Oh my gosh! Stop. Then they shall take some of the blood and put it on the two doorsteps and the lintel of the houses in which they eat it. They shall eat the flesh that night, roasted on the fire with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. They shall eat it. Do not eat any of it raw or boiled in water, but roasted, its head with its legs and its inner parts. And you shall let none of it remain until the morning. Anything that remains until the morning you shall burn. In this manner you shall eat it, with your belt fastened, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. And pausing there, God wanted them to do this because right after that, God was going to lead them out of Egypt. So God was like, okay, when you're eating this, I need you to be ready to go and get out and go. So anyways, verse 11, and you shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. For I will pass through the land of Egypt that night, and I will strike all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both men and beast, and on all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord. The blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and no plague will befall you to destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt. This day shall be a memorial day for you, and you shall keep it as a feast to the Lord. Throughout your generations, as a statute forever, you shall keep it as a feast. So, why am I reading this? Because for us, Jesus represents the ultimate sacrificial lamb. Jesus' blood poured out, and when we accept Jesus, we basically like smear that blood over us and over our houses, and God passes over us. Because all he sees is his son and his sacrifice that he made. Because we are sinful. We are not enough. So we need Jesus' blood. We need it over ourselves, over our house, and then God will pass over us. He will pass judgment on us because all he sees is his son. So that's why I'm reading this. And then we're going to skip to verse 29, and then we're going to read 29 through 32. At midnight, the Lord struck down all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sat on his throne, to the firstborn of the captive who was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of the livestock. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians. And there was a great city in Egypt, for there was not a house where someone was not dead. Then he summoned Moses and Aaron by night and said, Up, go out from among my people, both you and the people of Israel, and go, serve the Lord as you have said. Take your flocks and your herds as you have said, and be gone and bless me also. So, try to keep all of this in your mind, or at least the big parts. Keep all of this in your mind. And what we're going to do for the last part of this video, we're going to go back to Matthew 27, verses 27 through 56 with new eyes. What we all just read from the Old Testament, all this was written years, centuries before the crucifixion of Jesus. So flip back to Matthew chapter 27 and then go to verse 27, and we're going to read. Then the soldiers and the governor took Jesus into the governor's headquarters, and they gathered the whole battalion before him. And they striped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and twisting together a crown of thorns, they put it on his head, and put a reed in his right hand. And kneeling before him, they mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they spit on him, and they took the reed and struck him on the head. And when they had mocked him, they stripped him of the robe and put his own clothes on him and led him away to crucify him. And they went out. As they went out, they found a man of Cyrene, Simon by name. They compelled this man to carry his cross, and when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means place of a skull, they offered him wine to drink mixed with gall. But when he tasted it, he would not drink it. And when they had crucified him, they divided his garments among them by casting lots. Then they had sat down and kept watch over him there. And over his head they put the charge against him, which read, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." Then 2 robbers were crucified with him, one on the right and one on the left. And those who passed by derided him, wagging their heads, and saying, "You who would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross." So also the chief priest, with the scribes and elders, mocking him, saying, "He saved others, he cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross, and we will believe him. He trusts in God. Let God deliver him now, if he desires him." For he said, "I am the Son of God." And the robbers who were crucified with him also reviled him in the same way. Verse 45. Now the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying,
Eli lama sabachthani.
"Eli, Eli, 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 lama sabachthani." That is, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And some of the bystanders hearing it said, "This man is calling Elijah." And one of them at once ran and took a sponge, filled it with sour wine, and put it on a reed, and gave it to him to drink. But the others said, "Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to save him." And Jesus cried out again with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit. So, verse 50, that means just Jesus, he died and he committed his spirit to God, and he gave it to God and said, "Okay, you can have it," and he died. Verse 51, and behold, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth shook and the rocks were split. The tombs also were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. And coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many. When the centurion and those who were with him, keeping watch over Jesus, saw the earthquake and what took place, they were filled with awe and said, "Truly, this was the Son of God." There were also many women there looking on from a distance who had followed Jesus from Galilee, ministering to him, among whom were Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of the sons of Zebedee. Okay, we're done with the reading. And this is really what Good Friday is all about. So we can read all of this, all we want, but how do we apply this to our lives? We apply this by really just believing in Jesus. Like he says, "If you love me, you'll keep my commands." So by following Jesus, because when we accept Jesus, when we love Jesus, everything is an overflow of that, including the blood of Jesus over your life, over your household, right? And when God sees that, he doesn't see your sin anymore or your transgressions. He doesn't see any of that. He sees his son. He sees his blood. He sees the sacrifice. So that's where we apply it to our lives. So I think I'm going to end it here. Thanks for coming. I hope you took something fruitful from this. The Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Lord, turn his face toward you and give you peace. I'll see you guys eventually in the next video. And if you need any extra things like email or anything about that, all that stuff, that'll be in the description if you need any of that. Besides that, thank you for coming. I'll see y'all next time, and bye. Have a good Friday.